Welcome to the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust meeting of Thursday, February 9th, 2024. It is 9 a.m. and we're meeting in Memorial Hall in Town Hall. This is a all in-person meeting. It is being recorded and broadcast by Westborough TV, so thank you. We have a pretty full agenda. I now call the meeting to order. And the first item is approval of the minutes of the January 11th meeting. I had a couple I read through. There's only, I think, a minor or two correction I have when our secretary is ready.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. It's basically this one, and I think you just need the instead of two.
So for planning,
The second, yeah, the first bullet, second.
oh, yep, the objective,
Right.
yep.
And I think just to clarify on that third bullet point, in answer to the question from Mr. Bain, the estimated, I would say annual cost
Yep,
is that for 10 hours per week. That's fine.
yep, that's fine.
Okay, that's all I had. Anyone else? Corrections, changes, comments?
Look fine.
Okay,
Move we approve the minutes as
entertain a
amended.
motion.
Move we approve the minutes as amended of
Okay.
January 11th.
Second.
Second. Okay. All those in favor, just show of hands. Okay, that's 6 with 6 being present. Thank you. Moving on, we have updates on a number of projects. So the first one is 7 Lawton's Way. I've been sort of following on that. Latest information from the agent is that they are looking at the closing at the end of this month, at the end of February. We had authorized, the repair of the roof. That price came in at $6,800, so they didn't need to do any underlayment. I am awaiting the inspection report before I put in the voucher for the payment to the company. The agent said they were waiting for the snow to get off the roof to do the inspection. So it'll happen when it happens, but I assume they're going to be moving on it soon. So we're in good shape there. I did, the only outstanding issue was I did send, I didn't realize Jason had already left, our finance director. So I put together what we need to do to transfer money to the agent or to the, to sort of escrow it to closing for our subsidy. And I don't know, you were going to take care of it, but we can
If
talk
you
about
just
it afterwards.
Reach out to John Steinberg.
Okay, you
Yeah.
didn't?
I haven't talked to him yet about it.
Okay, so I'll follow up on that. So I'll just make a note for myself, Ed, to follow up with John on those issues. And there was also a reimbursement in there on 7 Lawton's Way. Okay, we'll take care of that. Okay, 3 Baylor. I talked last week with Mark O'Hagan, who is the developer that we've chosen, and he was down in Dallas, but he emailed me yesterday, I believe, or the day before, saying that he hopes to have any adjustments to the PNS. That was going to be any mitigation terms in that by the end of this week, at worst Monday. Okay, so we're making progress on that. Rogers Road, any questions on Baylor? Okay, Rogers Road. Alan and...
Kate and I went to the most recent, I think it was the January board meeting at our invitation, and discussed with the board, with the full committee, what's going on, and talked about possible next steps, and did not achieve closure. So that they're still, the Housing Authority Board's trying to sort out what they would like to do next.
Okay.
They're still interested. They got lots of ideas. There's lots of possibilities. There's lots of concerns. They don't quite know how they want to proceed. The good news is that, one piece of good news, the executive director seems to be taking hold, and the board seem to have good confidence, and the executive director is very interested in doing something. They just don't quite understand what they want to do and how to do it. So we just got to keep talking to them.
Okay. All right, we'll keep moving along. That's the development of what we've been talking about doing there, just for the new folks on the trust, is to build a senior housing of substance, like multiple, anywhere 20, 40 possible units, age restricted, on the property near the current senior center. All right, Lyman Street development. I haven't heard anything new.
No, it's before the zoning board of appeals.
Right, okay.
I believe it's a change, I haven't delved into all the depth if there are other variances needed, but it's a change of use
Yeah, it's-
Right.
request.
What they
Pretty
presented, what the board agenda, or the description of what's going to the board,
Hank?
it's not,
Can you,
I mean, the description that I read of what's going to the board does not appear to be a substantial change. It's a change of use. There's not a lot of real serious, large scale variances being asked.
okay.
By the way, and I assume, I have not heard anything about their situation in terms of sewer, but I would assume that they're as challenged as anybody on the whole issue of sewer. And it doesn't seem feasible that they would do septic, but who knows?
So
They had kind of mentioned that in one of the very first meetings before they did their actual
They have-
submission.
they,
You go ahead.
in our meeting with them, they indicated that they have septic capabilities for 90 of the units.
Oh, it was 90 units? Okay.
Of the first 90 units.
Right.
So,
I-
their view is they'll build in phases until,
Until they can get sewer.
So they've got a plan.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have,
Yeah,
again,
so-
they have a plan. They
Yeah.
may not have had it approved yet, I don't know.
So no, they're just at the starting phase.
Okay, they're very early on. Okay. All right, the next thing is the Community Development Block Grant. We did, Hank and I and Steve, we looked at that. Obviously, is, I think I explained at the last meeting, this was something that, is a HUD monies that is given to the state. The state takes in applications for grants for, a number of different types of projects. It's, fairly broad. It's not just housing. But we decided, given the short-term timing, as well as there's nothing that we have that's really ready for prime time, if you will, to submit as a grant. So we've said, let's just keep our eyes open, and probably next year is when, we'll keep ourselves knowledgeable and in the loop. But there's nothing this year that we believe is viable to submit as a grant. Hank, I don't know if you'd,
No, wait,
that's it, okay.
wait.
One other update that I'm just going to throw in here is Hank and I went before the ZBA on Monday evening. And Hank, you want to just to bring up what, an orientation to
That
45
was-
high and 60.
Okay, let's wait till we're on that agenda item under development project updates.
Yep, okay, no problem.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
Yep,
we'll
yeah.
do that
So we have it down there. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, annual town meeting, the warrant status, we have, as people know, 2 articles on the warrant. One is the transfer of 45 High. The other is to do a home rule petition to make some of the bidding on projects that we anticipate to be easier to do, provide us, how should I say, eliminate some of the needs that are enumerated in the 30B or section of MGL, so that we don't have to do bidding out to subcontractors. The main contractor can do that. Anything you want to add to that, Alan?
So, I heard from the town manager this morning that the select board is placing us on, or she's placing us on the agenda to present to the select board.
Okay.
on Tuesday night.
So, this coming Tuesday.
Yes, the
And we went-
13th.
And we went to the AFC, and Alan
Right.
was there.
Oh, right, right,
Yep.
yeah.
AFC voted in favor of both agenda items. There was one citizen who came and expressed some concern about the town transferring property, but it was one citizen that didn't receive a lot of support from the Finance Committee.
Yeah, it was unanimous for both
Yeah, it
articles from
So
the
we got
AFC.
support of the Finance Committee, and, the questions that they had were more about affordable housing than they were about the particular articles.
Right.
All right, so Select Board, the 13th of February, presentation of,
Yeah.
Do we need to go to the planning board? I mean, should we go to the planning board and just say, hey, would you guys support this, since it's, I don't know,
It doesn't hurt
okay.
to
right,
get more boards standing
Support.
up at town meetings saying that they voted in
I mean,
support.
I can talk to the planning board chair about this and the other the two development proposals we have, just to inform them, and
Yeah.
I'll
all
see
right,
if I
so you can
schedule
take that,
something.
Hank?
I'll take,
As an
I'll talk
action
to
item, okay. So we'll do a presentation and it'll be on both articles, Alan,
Yeah.
for the
Sure,
Select
may as
Board?
well, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Never hurts to have support from the board.
No, absolutely not. Articles, right now it's 18 and 28, but
Yeah,
it's
whatever.
probably going to change.
Okay. So the other thing related to currently numbered Article 18, the transfer of 45 High Street Extension, is several years ago, a number of community members approached the Recreation Commission about converting that property to a playground. We included in the packet is an email back from the Recreation Director saying that they really don't have any active interest. Their concerns, the Recreation Commission's concern was about the cost of leveling the property to create a playground, particularly since the bottom of the hole in the middle of the property is wetlands. And the added cost of wetlands relocation and restoration. Additionally, the size of the property is fairly small for a playground, and there hasn't been any follow-up from the people who originally approached them about it, so they don't believe there's much interest in it right now. They have no foreseeable use or need of the property at this point.
Good.
And that said, part of the way the article's worded the way it is because if town meeting makes the authorization, votes yes, and the select board transfers the property to us, should that reemerge or some other municipal use for that property come up, the select board still has time to consider that before we actually commit to the development work. Right? They can recall until we're fully permitted, they can take the property back if they deem a better municipal use.
Right. So they
But
have
that
it
was-
out.
We put that in specifically because we knew there was some interest on this property. We did learn the town's owned the property since 1939, and has not had
Done
any
anything.
use of it as of yet, so.
Okay.
The last item under annual town meeting is, I included the wording of a citizen's petition. And my understanding is the 10 signatures have been authorized, so it will be added to the town meeting warrant.
Well, I just talked to Christie, they're still vetting them.
Oh, they're still vetting them? Okay, I thought they had been approved, so. Okay,
Yeah, so-
but in any case,
20 minutes ago.
if,
But we'll assume that they'll get that
assume
in.
that it'll be added. You get to come sit in there?
So, I mean, if that article's on the warrant and it passes, what impact does it have on us?
So,
I mean, that worst case is it passes, right?
I mean,
So-
okay, so it has to be, town meeting has no authority,
Yeah.
right? And so by definition, it's a non-binding resolution. If you read the commentary that was submitted about the article, it's actually a thinly veiled personal attack on myself and some other members, other trustees who've been on this committee for a while. The proponent who did it, if you've watched school committee meetings, you'll know that he's a regular speaker during their citizens' request. I will say that beyond whatever his views and agenda might be,
This is the proponent, the main proponent.
his tactics is actually a coached approach to municipal government and changing the nature of it, where harassment of volunteers and elected officials to the point that people get fed up and don't want to do it anymore, which of course then reduces the candidate pools and gives opportunities for other people to step in where otherwise their ideas would be rejected in the court of public opinion. And so I see this as an extension of that. My sense is that as it relates to me and where I live, by the way, 8 Nash Street, there had been some emails sent to the select board about the fact that the Ridings 2 project at the end of Harvest Way was not something the trust took an interest in affordable housing. And those emails referred to the fact that there are 59 or 60 units being built. The vast majority of those are in Grafton. Are in Grafton.
Oh.
And that project was permitted prior to our current inclusionary zoning rules. So that's more than 4 or 5 years ago. And the financing was secured. And so the project actually began before this trust even existed. And so it's not like we'd even have a role. Knowing that it's going to be there, the proponent's going to have 10 minutes to speak on the floor of town meeting. We can let the moderator know if we want to provide a response or rebuttal. And we can go over that at our meeting in March.
Yes.
Which will be before town meeting if we want to do that. I'm happy to stand up and speak. Do a quick response in it.
Or I can stand up.
And put something together.
You know, we might
Okay.
just,
So that's where it is.
Or-
It's,
again, I mean, the basic theory that you get the various boards and agencies will act on this article. They'll take a vote on it, right? Finance committee, planning board, select board, et cetera. It might be good for us to just draft a memo to them expressing a position. Saying, hey, here's the housing trust. Here's what our position is. And to me, when I read the actionable single sentence, fantastic, let's do it. I mean, it is our intent, I mean, the words I would tend to use, it's our intent to make best efforts to equitably, not equally, equitably distribute affordable housing amongst the community and amongst the need, something like that, right? And see if the other boards will just, give him what he wants, because it's absolutely harmless, and it provides the community an opportunity to express their positive support for affordable housing. Somehow turn it into a positive, and it's just a non-binding referendum anyway, so make it a non-binding referendum on support for affordable housing and, wherever it's feasible to put in the community.
right. And if somebody can come up with land that is, where the numbers work and, in wherever part of town, we're open to listening as long as it's, the numbers can all work. That's, I mean, there's nothing that in it that says, there's some personal issues which are out of bounds, but if you want to just try to get affordable housing around different places in town, great.
Go ahead. Oh, no. I'm listening and learning. So, I agree. Good morning. I'm sorry I was late. I agree that affordable housing units should be located equally throughout the town, in theory. And also, there are resource issues with both procurement of affordable housing in terms of where we can actually get it, okay? But also in terms of the resources that people who are living in affordable housing need to also access. And so downtown is a more viable place is the best viable place
for affordable housing. And because then you have walkability to a lot of things. Or by the train station so that you can have accessibility to public transit, or on Route 9, because then there is also accessibility to major industry and employment opportunities. So while I think it is important to, be equitable in terms of where we look for opportunities for affordable housing units, I also think we need to think strategically about what affordable housing is for, who the people who are living in it, what they are requesting, and what makes the most sense from a financial standpoint for creating safe, affordable, and affordable housing for people. And so if we are going to create an affordable housing unit in a space in town that would be unaffordable for other reasons, then that doesn't make any sense. So I totally agree with Hank that we should put forth a memo saying why we are opposed to this article, because on its face, it makes a lot of sense. But if you really think about it, and if you really think about the rationale for affordable housing, this is not that.
This is
That's-
another, I mean, it could come across as another version of not my backyard, right? This proposal, don't put those places by me, put them over by you. And that's an unfortunate attitude, I think that almost comes through in some of the language.
That's a red herring, because that's
Yeah.
not, we've never
Yeah.
encountered that issue.
And we've formally and informally explored properties in every single precinct
Well, and what I'm saying is,
within Westborough.
to me, it came across like, don't put those places next to me, the person who wrote this
Right.
petition. So that's another version of what we want to
Avoid.
sort of, yes, ameliorate with our programs and with our approach.
Another thought is that the planning board ought to be concerned. The planning board is responsible for creating both a housing production plan and a commercial property production plan, and they're responsible for zoning and land use planning and such for the entire town, and they're doing a great job of promoting that. And, this would have an impact on themselves that, we ought to get we ought to get the planning board on board saying,
Right.
Along with us, saying, hey, we got this under control.
Well, that and there are zoning overlays, right, that have to be
Right.
taken into account. We can't just build
Right.
wherever we want.
Well,
There's the zoning
I mean,
aspects of
we
it
have
that
the-
come
I
into
mean,
play.
Technically,
Yeah.
we do have the ability using Chapter 40B to place anywhere. Kate's points are part of the decision process. And there are projects and programs where, building affordable units in neighborhoods that, aren't in the downtown area do also serve a different need for affordable housing. And the range of need for affordable housing is very broad,
It's very vast.
which creates the opportunity to create a wide variety of affordability, in meeting the different needs of those who would benefit from it. But to Sarah's point as well, in addition to, current zoning, right, we have a master plan. We have, a senior.
housing- the senior
needs-
housing
senior needs
analysis.
assessment.
The
assessment.
MBTA Communities Act is going to require
Right.
additional
The MB
zoning near the transit
the MBA
stations, yes.
MBTA Communities Act
Right.
will, create zones in different locations around town. I believe none of which are downtown, by the way. We now have a very robust inclusionary zoning requirement that basically says any residential unit development anywhere in town for any purpose, the 5th unit's affordable, and then the 11th unit's affordable, and then the 21st unit. So it guarantees that worst case, it's 10%. Best case, it's 20% for every residential development. Over the overlay districts have a 20% requirement with a roundup, right? So it's, unit 5, 11, 16, 21, et cetera, et cetera.
And usually on
And so
comprehensive permits, it's 20.
Yeah, and so, given that, I like, Hank's idea that says, yep, this is great, we want equitable, affordable housing throughout the community. Equitable meaning that it meets the needs of the people we're trying, and the populations we're trying to serve, as well as the broader community. Whether, and then outlining that, our the factors we look at, into taking our decisions in place, that we are open to placing in helping develop affordable housing anywhere in town.
That makes sense.
Within, but also realize that we have a responsibility to, use the master plan,
Right.
the data we're gonna get from the housing production plan, current zoning, as guidelines.
And financial resources
As
available.
well as our fiduciary responsibility to do the most good for the most people with the funds we have, and to leverage our funds for the greatest benefit to the community. And that is part of the guiding principles that we proposed, that were, under which this trust
Was formed.
was formed.
Okay.
So I guess my motion would be, if someone would like to work with me on it, Hank and/or Kate, to draft a letter to, I would say, the planning board, the select board, and the economic development committee.
To them, and inviting their support or feedback or thoughts?
Yeah, or
even
just letting
providing-
them know
yes.
that our
Inviting them to join us.
position.
What our
join us in-
position
in-
is.
And the question is whether we care whether there's a yes or no vote on town floor, on town meeting floor.
Another possibility is what's going on here is parliamentary maneuvering. That there are more than one person who can do that. We could offer an amendment on the floor that substitutes equitably for equal. Yeah, I think that's what we want. Yeah, equitable distribution for equal distribution, in accordance with the town's bylaws.
Okay.
Right, that may not be, but we would invite the select board and the planning board and whoever to join with us in offering that amendment on the floor.
Okay. Just for purposes of timing, I would, if Hank, you, Alan, and Kate
Sure.
would like to form a subcommittee to work
Yep.
on, if you will, both, a letter,
Sure, great.
any thoughts about how to approach things at town meeting, sort of do a brief.
Sure.
And then we can review that at our March meeting. Does that sound?
Great idea.
I think we need an initial letter quicker than that, so that if,
Yeah, no, you would, okay, right,
so that if they want us to come to one of their meetings, we're able to.
sure.
They can extend that invite to talk about this, and then we can follow up at our March meeting.
Right, okay. That's fine. I mean, I support that approach. I don't know, do we need an informal motion to
No,
create that
we can just go
subcommittee?
do it.
We don't need a formal
No,
motion.
fine. So leave it in your good hands as far as timing and actions.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Did the article information that is with this article go in the town warrant?
Yes.
Okay, so I just would like to formally say that the indication that the swamps of where affordable housing currently is insulting. And
Is-
is insulting.
Right.
And so I just think that this is, we need to come out and say that this is insulting to the current affordable housing within Westborough. So that's just my opinion that I would like to formally have on the record here, that this is insulting.
Agreed. And to the neighborhoods.
To the neighbors, right?
Correct,
to the
that's what I
neighborhoods.
mean, that's what I mean,
Neighborhoods.
the neighborhoods
in
where affordable housing currently exists. Yes.
I also find it very insulting to the good people of this committee and its chair, when I read some of that. It's not only not true, but also wrong, and the way it's phrased, very insulting. So anyhow, that's on the public record as well. All right, moving on?
Moving
We're all
on.
set on that? Okay. The Homeborough program. Some people have been very busy. So
Okay, so-
Alan, Kate,
So the Homeborough program, in the packet, you'll see as you recall, last meeting, we were in conversations with Metro West Collaborative Development to get a sense of what their ability, willingness, and cost would be to administer the program for us. And they're still working on pulling that together. They requested a draft application. And so I took, I had 6 or 9, some large
Yep.
number of applications. They were 99.9% the same. Made it very easy, so I provided them with a draft application and a draft checklist. Administratively, at this point, they're reviewing that. They'll come back with a scope of work, which is what services they would define around what it would mean to administer the program and how they would price that cost to do the administration work for us. That'll let us know whether or not it's something we need to do an RFP for, or we can just request alternate bids, or we can just move ahead as contracted services. And then that'll let us select an administrator. We would then need to refine program rules, policies, and procedures around actual implementation, that gets into the flow of paperwork, record keeping, and the one outstanding question, it's probably the largest outstanding question right now, is programmatically. We won't discuss and decide this today because they'll provide some recommendations. Is there are programs that say you can come to us that you want to start. You're looking for a home, but you're going to need down payment assistance. You can apply partially, get effectively a pre-authorization letter that's good for typically 180 days. So that when you go for your mortgage, you can show that as part of your ability to make the down payment.
Right.
There are other programs that say, don't come to us until you've applied for the mortgage, right? And we're lowering the cost of something that you should already be or close to affording, right? Or until you're ready to apply. And so it's food for thought. Personally, I like the idea of someone coming and saying, hey, I'm looking for a home. I can do it, but I need the down payment assistance. And us, or the administrator, saying, okay, here's a certification that for 180 days, if you're able to sign a PNS, if you're able to obtain the mortgage, that we will contribute the $25,000 towards the down payment in one of the 3 forms we allow.
And I think that
Yeah.
limiting the time upon which they can act
Yeah.
or use that grant.
Because it's an
or loan.
encumbrance of funds for a period of time.
Correct.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. Do we think that there are a lot of people in the Westborough community or who want to live here who will be able to use this program? Because I'm thinking at the income levels that we're trying to target, right? Folks would be able to afford maybe a $200,000, $400,000 house. And I just don't know that there are a lot of those in Westborough. I mean, hopefully there's at least
Well,
some, or maybe we'll find out.
The program goes up to
Yeah.
120% of AMI,
Right.
which is,
Well, it's
Yeah.
120, for a family of 4, it's
140.
123,000. So
Yeah.
120%, you're about 150,000.
40, 150.
yeah. So,
You could
We
have
don't-
income up to 150,000,
Yes.
which
yes.
is, you're not wealthy, but you're not penny poor.
Right, yeah.
and
I guess, do we know now, or is this kind of?
this is a
we know what the
pilot.
demand will be,
And
yes.
this is
okay,
part, in
yes,
part it's a
yes,
pilot.
yes.
We know demographically,
Sure, There should
we
be.
expect some demand.
yes.
The other aspect of this is, do we know people who want to buy, who rent in Westborough, who want to buy?
Sure.
Or who don't live in Westborough, who want to move into the community?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's both, and that includes town employees who who work here, who would love to be able to live here, be able to afford to live in the community they serve. And there are advantages to the town to have
People
town
live, work-
employees
yes.
who are residents as well. And so, the goal is, and sort of the scope of the project, is to say, let's put this out there.
Right.
Effectively, we've funded it to the level of 6 grants,
Okay,
right?
yes.
So, we've previously approved set aside $150,000 towards the grants. That's 6 or potentially more, but 6 grants, or loans, depending on their income level. We'll spin up the program and market it and see what the response is and what the need is.
Yes, and then, so it sounds like we've kind of got a draft application, but if we're going the route where we want people to have the funding available before they actually sign the purchase and sale agreement, I think we've got it set up
Or
now. so
before
they're
they
supposed to-
apply for a mortgage, even,
Right.
a mortgage authorization.
yeah,
Like they
so-
could
so we can
say,
tweak it.
how much will you
Right.
Yeah, we'll
loan me?
We'll
tweak-
tweak the application and
we can-
the,
we'll-
yes, exactly.
In the
to adjust
process, and there'd be a
that.
process for pre-approval and one for, hey, I've got a property, I've got a mortgage, but I can use, I can still benefit from the down payment assistance.
And then we'll have kind of a lien, like a second mortgage, a lien
Yeah,
on
so-
some of these
so
houses.
the
So
way-
that's gonna be part of what
Right, so,
our vendor will
Right.
help.
Yeah, and it is,
With or-
and a very interesting aspect of the
Right.
program is we subordinate our loan
Yes,
to the primary
Right.
loan. The benefit of that is it doesn't hurt somebody's, I don't want to say their credit rating, but if they wanted to, at some point, 5 years down the road, take out a HELOC or something like that, we still are subordinated to those other lendees.
right, so.
is that part of what the Westborough Collaborative is gonna help us with, the lien administration and so forth, or would we need to find another resource for
Well,
that?
part of the administration of the program would be
Yes.
filing the municipal lien.
Right, okay.
Or, just basically it's recording it. with the
Recording it
register
on
deeds.
the deed.
Sure.
So the way the program's designed is, if we're issuing a grant, that grant, very similar to 7 Lawton's Way, gets paid directly to the seller on
Mm-hmm.
close. So it does not impact the finances
Yes.
of the grantee who are supporting it all. If it's a loan, either the forgivable loan or, they're both deferred payment loans.
Right,
At one step, it's forgivable over years. At the other step, it's interest-free and it's due on any subsequent transfer of the property. And so by definition, our intent is that our loan will be automatically subordinated against a primary mortgage, a home equity line of credit, or any lien due to a government-sponsored program related to business.
yeah.
So if
That
someone,
makes sense,
if
yeah.
someone gets the loan from us and they get it, and they want to get an SBA 7 or 504 loan to start a business or grow a business they own,
We would agree to have ours
that
be subordinate
we're
to the
automatically
others, yes.
subordinated behind that
Mm-hmm.
loan. Because we're not expecting any payment until the property eventually transfers or sells.
Great, yeah, let me know how I can help as we finalize documents, or,
Yeah.
again, it sounds like we want to move towards having the funds available even to support their applications.
We're
So
going
we
to drag
can
you into
tweak all
this,
of that. Mm-hmm.
given your expertise, because we are going to need
Tag.
a loan agreement. That paperwork hasn't been written yet,
I
so.
mean,
I'm not drafting a loan agreement, but I'm happy to review one or to work with somebody.
I mean, to tie down the Ts and Cs, we really need an administrator to talk to us about what it means if we choose option A or option B, what does it mean?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of detail there that
So,
too hard to sort through.
glad to
Yeah,
hear
a lot
that,
of
Sarah.
details
I
to
mean,
work through, yes.
Alan and
Yeah.
Kate have been driving it, but more than happy, I'm sure they'll be more
Yeah.
than happy to reach out as.
And just so you know, the median household income in Westborough is $119,000.
So, yeah,
So there, in terms of
so
what,
based on income, there should be quite a few people who would be
Correct.
eligible,
Right.
right?
Correct.
yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
Yeah.
and interestingly enough, just, sort of generally keeping an eye on what's happening in the real estate market over the last 6 months, 9 months, we're seeing an increase in the number of smaller homes
Which is
entering
fantastic.
the market. Those are often starter homes, people are retiring.
But more
Or
affordable.
moving up if they
Right, just
can.
by their
Or
nature.
moving up if
Yes,
they can.
Yes.
And so, the program's great, but if there's no housing stock available, but we'll see how that goes.
And then if interest rates come down, that helps as well, just for people being
Sure.
able to get
Yep.
enough bang for their buck when they,
And we,
take out a
and we do have a
mortgage.
ruling from the State Ethics Commission that, anyone involved in overseeing or administering the program is not eligible. So
Good.
long as that's the case, which will be written into our rules, then this is not considered an ethics violation for a town employee to use the program.
Right.
It's
Not
because
us.
there's-
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there's state law against, there's state
We're
laws
blocked by its
against
nature.
town
Yes,
employees or officials using their position for personal gain.
right. But this would
This
not be
is
that.
not
This is
considered that.
available to the general community, and it could include
it-
town
it-
employees if they're
and
not
also
involved in the process.
Because we're an independent entity within the town, this isn't anything that would ever end up in a collective bargaining agreement.
Great.
Right? So it really doesn't, it's something that the town can market, that would be available to town employees, but it's not part of the employment arrangement for any town employee. It's just a program that they happen to qualify for.
Okay.
As town employees.
So,
we've done that
in
homework.
in summary, I assume that you're working with Metro West,
We're waiting to hear back, yes.
waiting to hear back from them. Some of the, if documents need to be adjusted, we'll see those hopefully in March,
Yeah.
okay? And I don't know if at that point we'd be ready to authorize.
If
or
we,
vote.
if we don't have to go to bid, I expect we'll have what we need in March to authorize the launch of the
implementation.
program. It'll take
Launch.
some time to get, all the materials put together.
Yeah,
Administratively and in the loan agreements, et cetera, but we would launch later in the spring.
yep,
If not, I expect we could be ready by April
okay.
to get that process rolling.
Okay,
stuff.
any questions, other questions on this?
I think I've asked plenty.
Well, you're part of the
You're
group
great,
now, so you
yes.
can ask as many questions as
Yeah.
you want.
Keep them going.
Okay, moving on, and thank you for all the work you've done on
Yes.
this, it's really,
It's really Alan.
Extraordinary.
Huh?
It's
Thank you.
really
yeah, I
Alan.
know, well, you're being very,
I look at it
Humble,
and,
you're,
Yes.
and
okay. Emergency rental assistance, the TD Bank grant.
Okay.
And,
So,
yeah, you want to take
Okay,
that,
yeah, I'll
Alan?
take- I'll
That's
take
sort
that.
of
This is-
new,
this is, a reminder for and for our new trustees on several points. When the trust was first created, it was in the middle of the pandemic. And while it's, sort of outside the normal scope of a trust, we learned that many housing trusts were doing emergency rental assistance programs to help households impacted by the pandemic avoid eviction. And this was before the eviction moratoriums went into place. It was also recognized that landlords were looking for other reasons to evict people to get around those moratoriums. And so the trust allocated funds, contracted with Metro West Collaborative Development, and ran an emergency rental assistance program. We helped over 50 individuals
Yep.
across 17 households. One of those households, in the middle of receiving assistance, moved out of the area to be with family, I believe in another state. But for the remaining 16 households, we prevented evictions and helped those families bridge. For some, it was merely assistance until the raft and other state programs could catch up in processing applications. And in other cases, we were providing longer-term assistance. So it's a success there. And at a couple of points in time, we've discussed whether or not we should put together a program. The issue has always been initial funding and how do we make it sustainable. Jump forward to a week ago. A colleague of mine, who's a vice president at TD Bank, reached out and said, hey, I know you work with a housing trust. You should apply for the bank's Homes for Everyone grant program through the TD Bank Charitable Foundation. All told, they've got over $7 million committed to grants for affordable housing programs. Grants are either at $150,000, $175,000, or $250,000 as far as the request. You may actually get more or less than that with the award.
so this would be a trust such as ours submitting a request for a grant up to, what were those numbers?
So we we can apply for $150,000, $175,000, or $250,000 are the three levels.
Do you have in mind a level?
Yes. So,
And then we would We would do or contract out the administration of
Correct,
that
correct.
distribution.
Right. So.
Okay, go ahead, keep going.
We don't, in receiving the grant, he said your trust should apply, you have all these great programs. Looking at what we're doing currently and where we're at, I reached out to Ed, and we talked about some options and felt that, given that we have had a program written for emergency rental assistance already, and we have a 1-week timeline to submit,
Let's build on what we have.
let's build on what we have.
Brilliant.
Rather than starting from scratch. And it's a way to do something that we've talked about there being a need and that we want to do, but not comfortable within the use of the current funds given what they're earmarked for. And so what you have is where we are as of Monday for grant submission materials. There's been some additional work since then on it. We have until end of day Monday to submit the grant application. What we're looking to do is request $175,000. Why? Because we can point to our ERA program where it was at 125, the SARA program, right? And say we did 125 and look at the impact we had. As part of that, we would use 5% of the 175,000 towards administration, and the trust would then allocate 17,500 in additional funds towards administration. Okay, that actually provides
166,
enough.
250.
Looking at what it cost per case with our prior program, it actually provides a slightly higher level of funding,
That's good.
which we may or may not need, but it also includes enough money that we can produce promotional materials, flyers, posters, mailings, et cetera, and do the outreach to make people aware of the program. The goal would be that this grant, if we win, I believe would be sufficient to fund the program for the first 18 months, which gives us a good 12 months to identify and go after continued sources of funding outside of our other typical funding mechanisms. So, for example, this could be a community development block grant that we apply to next year, right, for funding. Or we can go and, we can go to other foundations and grants to go after this. There'll be money in the housing bond bill for these types of programs, when that
Should
passes.
that pass, yeah.
And we can apply for those funds. And so it's a way to sort of kick off a program at minimal cost to the trust.
Right, and I see, just here, we would wind up with about 166,000.
It'd be $166,250
$250 we would
is
actually.
budgeted for the actual aid.
Mhm.
The next steps, we have to submit this by February 13th. Approval notification would happen sometime in April. We would have to contract with an organization as a program administrator. I did reach out to Metro West Collaborative Development because they ran our program last time. They are interested in it, and they are aware that we can pay them on a per case basis, as we did last time, or we can do this as a contracted services, as a fixed fee. That provides them, for the 18-month period, provides them a more stable funding, so it doesn't go up and down, which may ease their needs financially for staffing this type of program. If we get the grant, we would have to do the contract. We would prepare communications and a full launch plan and materials, ideally launching the program in June from a marketing standpoint, technically start the program July 1st, right? So then it aligns with the fiscal year and a well-defined 18-month period.
Okay. Now, I thought I heard you mention that we would contribute towards the administrative costs.
Yeah, so if the grant is in the grant application.
Right.
And so this would be, a motion today.
Right, that's what I'm getting
Right,
to.
would be to authorize $17,500 is a 10% matching fund to the grant to cover administrative and overhead costs.
Okay, so 10%.
And that's based on the costs that came out of the prior program, so it's kind
Yeah.
of based on our experience
Yeah.
for that, yeah.
So 17,000 would be the encumbered amount.
And the way we came up with that is, in the CIRA program, we paid a small fee per application they processed, and then a larger fee per case.
Like if it was approved
So if
and
it was
they started
approved
to
and they
pay.
started
Sure.
doing it, that was like $450 per case. It was $50 per application. So we looked at the total cost versus the number of households survived, came up with an average. When we look at we did some projection on what we think the average dollars per household will be under this program.
Sure.
Given the way we've defined it. We sort of looked and said, well, how many cases would that be if we use some of those same numbers? It comes out to, a little around $25,000. So providing that 10% match and using 5% of the grant funds towards overhead administration covers that type of fee structure, as well as giving us about $1,200 to $1,500 for mailings, materials, any legal costs for anything we might have to file, or have reviewed by council, things of that nature. So it's doable. We see in working so after talking to Kate, talking to Ed, I reached out to Kate because she's mentioned several times we should do emergency rental assistance. And we talked about offering, and you can see in the grant submission that there's multiple types of assistance or for different situations that we're offering. So we're offering assistance for people who are transitioning into housing the first time or after being unhoused. We're offering
So that would help with like first and last.
Yep.
Yeah, first and last, and utility deposits,
Yep.
as well as a few months of rental assistance to get people in and financially stable. The second form of assistance is bridge assistance for people who are applying for rental subsidies or rent relief programs from the state, such as RAFT,
or
or
something, yep.
their, I forget the other name of it. It's the second program, and so that's meant to be transitional assistance or bridge. And then the third is mitigation, right, and eviction avoidance. And that is basically grants that will mitigate rent increases. So if someone is financially eligible and they come to us and say, my rent went up $400 a month this year, I can't afford that, our assistance would mitigate the rent increase for up to a year, so that we prevent the eviction.
And this may not be a likely outcome, but what happens if we don't have enough demand? I mean, obviously during COVID, people were laid off and just suddenly had no income, that sort of thing. I'm guessing there's a lot of needs still out there. Do we have a
Yeah.
good sense of that? We think that particular
Yeah, I mean,
scenario, not enough demand, we just have dollars.
Informal
from this program,
conversations
is not
with the
gonna
director of
happen.
the
Yes.
senior center, is they pretty consistently get calls about individuals facing rent increases who can't afford it.
And they'd like to be able to send them to a program that supports
then
exactly
we'd be able
that.
to, I'm sure they would help us market that this is, that this is available.
It's one of the top problems that social services face is
Sure.
eviction prevention. And there's just not enough services or resources available to support families
Right.
or individuals or households. So, and just there is some data. I sent an email to everybody with some data websites that we use to inform what we're doing here. And one of those facts is that 22.8% of the renters in Westborough are severely cost burdened,
Yes.
meaning that they
Right.
spend 50% or more of their income
I
on
believe
rent,
it.
which is not sustainable. And so this program would help those individuals and those households. So.
It may not solve the long-term problem for some people, but at least it gives some breathing room, especially if they hit. And this has been the case. There was apartment complex over on, downtown here, won't name it, that jacked up their rent significantly, and people were just, especially some seniors, were like, I can't afford this. They're on fixed incomes, things like that. We may not be able to carry them forever, but if we can give them some, like a year's worth of timing to try to find other, housing, then that would be, it would take a big burden off of
Right.
them,
And-
because they normally only get a month or two notice.
And if we're able to find other sources of funding that
Yeah.
make this, I'll be
Sustainable,
optimistic. When
yeah.
we find other sources of funding that let us continue this year to year, then yes, we can provide ongoing, at that point, we can decide, whether, this remains an emergency rental assistance program or a longer term. Ideally, you want people to get into the existing long-term rental assistance and rent programs that are available. And so it's not always an easy thing to do. I think most people with a business degree would struggle with the raft application. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
huge, right? It's painful.
That's, a big
and
challenge,
so-
isn't it?
And so, we can look at, based on who utilizes the program, we can do some data analysis and say, okay, are there people who need a small amount of assistance, but they don't qualify for the big programs from the state, right? And where something like, $100 or $200 a month keeps them, they don't need the $15,000 a year in support, right? They need a couple $100 a month to fill the gap. They don't need thousands a month. They need a couple $100 or $100 a month to fill the gap.
Right.
We can evaluate whether we want to offer ongoing rental assistance to fill that gap. Initially, this is an emergency rental assistance program, and it's focused on getting people into stable housing situations, helping them avoid eviction, and if they're going to qualify or they're likely to qualify for state programs, getting them through that gap period, which can
Yeah.
be several months of approval.
Well, one thing that stands out, there's this line here about every family will be connected to a local service provider for ongoing housing stabilization. I'm not sure how that works, but I wonder if there's some version of the world where we help hire a part-time person to help people with their bigger applications, the ones that can be so
So-
difficult and that kind of thing. But we don't have to decide that
Yeah,
now.
so
It just occurred to me
youth-
as I'm looking at this.
Youth and Family Services
Yeah.
has someone
Who can help
trained.
to actually help people go through that raft of
Katie's on
giant
that
application,
board.
yeah.
Yeah, CHAPA, and there are nonprofits
Right.
in the
Right.
area, and the Housing Authority
So
can
we think
also
that's
assist people.
well covered as well.
Metro West Collaborative Development,
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to them, again, they're interested in doing this program, they did the one with us before. Part of their process, in fact, part of what they would require of us is to give them permission to provide that housing counseling service. And
Great.
That's
so-
kind of part of what the
and other
contract is
resources.
with them.
Excellent.
Is that
So
kind of,
when-
it is part of the
Perfect.
contract.
When Metro West Collaborative Development, with our emergency rental program, when we handed them a case, they
Yeah.
evaluated from the rental assistance. They
Fantastic,
were filling out
yes.
fuel assistance vouchers.
Yeah, so
they
that's
were-
perfect.
they
So
were
we'll
co-
do our
you know,
part, and
Utility
then they'll have
assistance.
the full slew of
it-
support, yes.
Right, and get people the other supports they need to
Exactly.
make the housing
Perfect.
situation stable.
Okay.
So
All right.
the ask on this, before I make the motion, because
Yes.
we're,
It appears to me as though we're limiting this to Westborough residents.
yes,
Okay.
yes. If people read through the materials and you have any questions or comments,
Well, you know me, I might have some minor word changes that I'd like to propose.
please email ASAP,
Mm-hmm.
because this all needs to be wrapped up and submitted by Monday.
Great.
And absent, we won't go to that here, but I would move that the trust allocate $17,500 as a matching, a 10% matching component for the TD Bank Charitable Foundation Homes for Everyone grant program application.
And authorize the submission
Yeah, oh,
of
yeah,
the
sorry.
grant.
And
in the name of
authorize
the trust.
Kate and myself to submit the grant application on behalf of the trust.
Second,
Wait, who seconded?
Okay, any more discussion? We've sort of got a good presentation. Other questions or concerns? Not, looks like people are ready to vote on this. All those in favor? And that's 7-0 with 7 being present. Thank you. Thank you, Alan, especially for this. This is, this could be a nice another.
Beautifully done. Like overnight, essentially. Kudos for the work on this.
He doesn't sleep. He's
This
a
is mostly,
nocturnal
That's
animal.
correct.
most of the wording is Kate's, so.
Well, many
I
thanks.
actually did contribute to this one.
Many
I did.
thanks.
It's like-
Beautifully done, very
Yeah.
professional.
So,
Yeah,
now
but-
part of that, everyone, all the trustees should have received an email with a link to a document.
Yep.
I need you, if the information, so the trust, the application requires what's typical officer information, which is name, address, employer, and title, job title, if any. And so I just need people to double check. You're listed, I emailed a link to a document. It's not in the, it's not,
That's fine.
wasn't in the
When did you
packet.
mail that?
Yesterday, or the day before.
I don't know if I saw
And
that.
you were
Did you
requesting,
sent it to the housing trust email?
And your personal email.
Yeah.
So double check.
I don't think I saw
If
that. I'll
not,
look
I
again.
will,
Yeah.
I will send it out immediately, again, as an attachment immediately after this meeting. If there are any changes, just email me back with the changes so we can
Sure.
submit that
Okay.
as part of it. And we're still waiting on the financial stuff from the town accountant's office.
okay.
Um,
All right, I don't think I got it, but mail it out again, and we'll
Okay.
put in,
okay.
make sure you have, you know, accurate information, which we should have
If your
for,
LinkedIn profiles are up to date,
yeah,
I
that
should
way,
have the
we'll-
employer and the job titles
Yeah.
right.
okay, good. All right,
I saw you get looked at.
moving on, we're making good progress here. We're a little ahead. So project updates on 45 High Street and 6 Beach.
So we've been to
Thank you.
two meetings presenting our concepts for these two projects. We went to the so-called one-stop shop meeting that's convened by the Economic Development Coordinator. At that meeting, the people who are present are essentially all of the town staff authorities who have permitting authorities and overview of the technical, geographic, land use aspects of, you know, zoning and public safety and water and sewer and all those things. We took Waterman with us because a lot of the feedback will be acted on by changing the concepts. And out of that, we got some good feedback, some things that we have to do to meet the needs of the water, sewer, public safety, et cetera, people. Waterman has given us some proposals on what it would cost to update the drawings. At this point, I don't think we want to do any more engineering work. I'll explain why in a second. We also went to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Ed and I were at that one we presented the concepts to them in an informal, get informal feedback. We informed them that it was our intention to follow the 40B comprehensive permit process. Now, they did indicate that they don't have a lot of familiarity. They've not serviced a number of past cases where a so-called friendly 40B in the, which is a 40B in the environment where the community is above the 10%. They haven't been through that process under those constraints, so they have some learning to do, but there's no reason why we can't do that. And they basically, you know, looked at the concepts with us and said, hey, you know, you got a couple of key points that I walked away with. One is, not a polite way of saying it, but we're just another developer. From this, the Zoning Board of Appeals has to look, even though we're a town entity with all kinds of good purposes, they've got to look at us and treat us the same as they would treat any other capable developer who came forward with the same kinds of proposals. So we have to do the kinds of things that developers would normally do. Second, they said, hey, you need to make a compelling case for why the community should support a comprehensive permit for these developments. And oh, by the way, as part of that, you need to clarify the financials. You need to convince us that it's financially feasible. I intuited that they had had some bad experience with developers who came in with proposals that the financial backing wasn't as strong as it needed to be, and when they got first level approvals, they came back and expanded the densities and asked for more variances to make the projects financially viable. So we're gonna need to put together, we need to get a little more clear about what is financially viable and what is a compelling argument for why the community should support this high-density housing in these areas. Ed?
The other thing I picked up was, you know, the chair did mention how they get pressure from, particularly the schools, and it's understandable as far as development of additional housing that would attract families with children, that would then put more pressure on the schools. And we all feel that through our regular taxes. You know, they said that's a weighting factor with that. They seem to be very, well, more amenable to like senior housing, which would eliminate that pressure. But once again, I think we need to be able to show the need of, you know, however the model is, whether we're building, selling, renting, condos, what have you, based upon needs within the community. Now, I did mention to them that we're right in the process of doing a housing production plan. And as part of that plan, I think it's important that we make sure that we have numbers in that plan showing that need, particularly among seniors and others. That just like we did in our original document, we want to make sure we present the case of showing the need, you know, and that can be a combination of level of housing burden, as Kate was just mentioning, as well as just people wanting to age in the community, which I brought up as a, you know, desire from our senior analysis.
Well, and for these two potential projects, right, one of the challenges we have is we don't have a sense of how much it will cost, what the dollars will be to build on it yet, right? We're at the initial design stages.
So let me talk to a few points. 45 High Street Extension is within the town's downtown overlay, as well as the senior overlay. 4 units, I believe, it actually could be allowed under that.
But again, the cost is
we
up in
wouldn't
the air.
necessarily.
Yeah.
We do need budget information. I guess in part of even though the zoning board of appeals would be the permit issuing authority, having the support of the broader town, having not only the data, but the support of the broader town is important. So I guess I would ask Hank if you would be willing to reach out to the chair of the planning board.
Yep.
And ask if the planning board would be interested in talking about these projects as if they were going to issue the permit, where we can talk about mitigation and zoning variations and densities and our plans, come to an agreement before we start the process with the zoning board, so that the planning board, who would otherwise issue a permit, would be in agreement with our plans for support.
Yeah, I think we need to go to the planning board and get their feedback. I also think we need to narrow down the options we're willing to consider.
Yes.
We're
To-
gonna, I mean,
To that end,
to go much further, we'll need to have some countable number of options that we can do financial analysis on, and we can also do permitting feasibility analysis. We can understand what will be the constraints
Right.
if we try to permit these options. And
so
that's kind of a strategic analysis of what makes sense.
So to that end, Senator Michael Moore reached out. He and I were at an event together. He mentioned that there is an underutilized program that could provide us with a technical assistance grant that would cover the cost of the consultant to do the project planning and the financial analysis for us.
Outstanding.
And so I'm waiting to get that information,
Great.
and once I do, I will share it with
Yeah.
everyone, and
Senator, oh, so it was Moore. It was,
Senator Moore.
yeah,
his
but we
office.
also had Jamie,
Eldridge, our prior senator,
right, our prior senator, who's also very, very supportive of
affordable housing.
affordable housing, you know, with the redistricting after the 2020 census. Mike Moore is now our senator, but that's great if there's any way we can save some money and get some expertise in. Outstanding.
I can get some preliminary kinds of cost estimates from a couple of nonprofit consultants who do this kind of the financial and feasibility and permitting analysis. I've talked with them before. Actually, we talked with with at least two concerning the housing authority work, one of whom was willing to bid. So there's at least two, and we can try and find a third, but I can get folks to give us some proposals. And if this, so again, move forward to the planning board, but also start getting an idea of how much it's gonna cost to get resources. 'Cause
Right.
I
So-
would be surprised, I mean, I think we have some people on a committee who have the intellectual knowledge of how to do the financial modeling and the permitting modeling, but I'm not sure we have the time, and we certainly don't have the experience.
No, this is,
This is not simple
that would be
stuff.
great, that'd be great. And then,
And this would be, I'm sorry, it would be a grant from
Well,
whatever, no,
State
I'm
grant.
asking,
it would be a state grant.
a state
Or
grant, and then
Or
we
it may,
would.
it may come, I'm not sure, it may come through MHP, but it would be state
All
funds.
right, it would flow to us somehow, and then we would be responsible for hiring the consultant.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, we need to understand what the consultant costs, because we may
Yeah.
be able to afford it ourselves, I
It-
don't know.
Well,
But a grant certainly will help,
it could also be a technical grant where
right,
the state has consultants
Yeah.
yeah,
under contract, and they simply
Right, they
say,
Allocated.
Yep.
here's a consultant.
Right.
Work with this individual, work with this company.
Okay. So
I'm
we'll
not
see,
sure,
great.
I'm waiting for the information on that.
More to come.
And then the only other, I've got the only other question I would have would be, and this would be an informal ask to the housing authority. One option we've discussed for the property was if these were developed as rental units, contracting with the housing authority to manage.
Right.
Which, if you look at two-bedroom units, right, in between the two properties, let's say we have 10 units at 2 bedrooms, the rental income from that at 80% AMI would be a little over $17,000 a month
Of the total.
of the total.
Right,
So
so
the question,
so
so
1,700.
the question is, if we sort of do some rounding, and we don't need a commitment, we need, I'm just looking for a sense of willingness to consider. If we did a management agreement that provided them 90% or 95% of the rent to manage newly developed properties have some regular maintenance, but shouldn't need any, and we would still hold responsibility for capital improvements down the road, but operationally, would they be able to take on those 10 units, and would it provide them enough money to expand their maintenance resources?
yeah, I think, would they,
And the answer isn't, I'm not looking for a yes or no, I'm saying, ooh, I'm hoping they'll say, that's an interesting idea we're willing to discuss.
I mean, I can have that, I mean, we can have that conversation with them. But another part of that is if they're gonna be a property management agent, they have to be able to do that outside of the constraints that they're under from their regulatory bodies. Because
So regulatorily, the housing authority can manage affordable units that they don't own. Our housing authority currently does that for the Department of Social Services.
yeah, but I think they need to understand that some of the activities they'd have to engage in, like marketing and tenant selection and things like that, would be dramatically different than what they're currently doing. They need to address those concerns, say, hey, yeah, we're willing to put together a proposal on what it would take to do this.
Right. Or have,
Or
or
say, hey,
partner
yeah,
with an affirmative marketing.
partner with, I mean,
Resource.
putting together a proposal, they don't have to resource it all themselves. They go out and hire some people to help them or whatever, but
Right.
would they be willing to come forward with proposals to be a management agent for for properties that are not under their housing authority restrictions or under any other state restrictions other than an income restriction.
I mean, under
yeah.
their, well, right now, they own all the properties that they manage.
No, they do
correct?
not.
They manage properties that they don't own, but
There
they're.
are two properties that are owned
Which
by
one?
the state.
And are they required to follow their normal process for those ones, where they have to go to this giant waiting list, take the
Yes.
next person, that person has to be willing
So
to
the
move
pro-
from
so
2
the
hours
properties
away?
that
Yeah,
the
so we want to
state-
avoid
the state
that.
properties-
Yes.
The state properties that they manage, the housing authority, I don't believe is involved in tenancy at all. It is a management, they are not.
It's a
tho-
maintenance management
It's a,
contract.
it's a maintenance management contract, and it benefits the housing authority from a revenue standpoint, but also from a unit census standpoint.
Right.
So if we had that type of arrangement with them for these properties, where they're, fine, we still, even if we have to contract with someone to do the rental process, once someone's in, if they're collecting the rents, if they're cutting the lawn and moving the snow and making minor repairs, then as a management entity to run it day-to-day, month-to-month, they can, if we do it properly, they can count those units within their census, which gets them closer to the 200 threshold. And it could provide additional revenue that more than offsets the cost of servicing those units, particularly given that they're brand new.
Who's the landlord in this case?
The landlord would be the trust.
Trust or.
The trust
a
would own the
sub-
property.
We're the owners.
And we
It
would
could be
need-
structured that they're technically, from a leasing standpoint, the landlord.
We would need to contract out all of the
Yeah.
all the management things that need to be done.
Yeah, there are
I'm
a
not even
lot of
sure what all
obligations.
those are.
Yeah,
Collecting
there are a lot of
it.
obligations on landlords in
Being a
Massachusetts.
landlord is
Yeah.
a fairly complicated business.
Yes.
I don't
and
think
that-
we should be
Adding
the
to it.
landlord.
I don't think so
adding to
either.
it The layer of income restriction.
Effectively,
Whoa. Let Hank finish.
I mean, being a landlord and adding to it a layer of income restriction and a possibly layer of other regulatory concerns gets very complicated. You'd need to contract that out to
But
to
we would-
someone who's pretty capable.
we would
Right.
be effectively, we would own property and buildings that are effectively public housing. So
Yeah.
renting out these units for the process for renting doesn't actually have to be different than the process they use. Just as the housing authority has two-family units that they rent out.
Yep.
These could be rented out the same way to the same qualifying applicants.
Great. I'm totally cool with that. And that it's more than just management, property management, because it's also
absolutely.
landlord.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like
Yeah.
Collecting
Right.
rent.
Right.
Collecting
Right.
rent and receiving phone calls about problems that are
Yeah,
happening
right,
with other
yeah.
tenants and
Yeah.
all of that kind of
Which
stuff.
takes everything.
Okay, so, because it's more, I just want to be clear that it's more than just like,
We would
property
we would
maintenance.
own the property,
yep,
right?
yep,
And everything else would be then, we will have built public housing.
correct, which I'm
Right.
cool with.
It's an option. All we need to know at this point is if it's something they're willing to consider.
Can have that conversation.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Now, just for some new people, one of the Housing Authority currently has, I think it's 100
Like
or
110,
110 units under their management within Westborough. The state likes to see things for, I guess, efficiency purposes at certain levels, and one of those levels is like 200 units under management by Housing Authority. If you're down at that 100 level, the state might want to merge you with another municipality's housing authority to manage, those properties. So obviously, they're concerned about having sufficient number of units so that they're up at that 200, which kind of protects them against, being forced to merge with another authority. So
Yeah.
that's the reason that you'll hear that number, that 200 number, that seems to be that magic number to remain
The
independent.
constraints that being a small housing authority put on your financial abilities
Mhm.
to hire staff and such are pretty severe.
Sure.
They cannot afford they're not allowed to under regulatory guidelines and cannot afford to hire a full-time administrator for their business. Their administrator's part-time, okay? The salary that the administrator is paid is specified by the state. All right, and I don't remember what the numbers are, but it's not,
You don't get,
much.
It's
Yeah.
not, yeah,
it's very difficult to hire staff.
so
Sure.
so,
when you
Good.
hit that 201st unit, you're considered a mid-size housing agency by the state. You're now eligible for operating subsidies, which
Which they need.
they need, right? And so,
so to the extent that we can create housing through various mechanisms and have them manage it, that's to the benefit of the current tenants in, those affordable units that they manage, as well as future tenants. So it's all to the benefit of the people of Westborough.
Great.
Okay, moving on, any other things on 45 High Street or Beach Street that, okay.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. Issues in correspondence. The only thing I have is we are in the process of putting together financial statements for year end, calendar 2023, although we really don't have to work on a fiscal year basis as the town does, but it's good to line up quarterly with that. So I've requested and been told that I should have something today, tomorrow, for just a dump, although we maintain a ledger of expenses, et cetera, for over the last 6 months of calendar 2023. And we'll hopefully provide that in the next meeting, so that everybody sees, our condition, what we've
Great.
spent money on, where things stand, what we've encumbered, et cetera.
okay. Okay, so Ed jumped right in with an issue in correspondence. I decided to add this to the agenda. I was helping Ed with the agenda because he's off helping seniors with file taxes and get what's owed back from Uncle Sam and the state back to them, which is more great work
And
for
I
you to
did
do.
get, I've done 2 senior circuit breakers where they've increased from 1,200 last year up to 2,590 this year in senior circuit breaker refundable credit, which means that even if you don't owe any taxes, you don't, or get any taxes, you can still receive that as a credit. And I had a couple that are, both just on, they live in Westborough, I did it last Friday, both live in Westborough, they only live on Social Security. They owed nothing, they were getting no refunds back, it's just Social Security, and they got that $2,950. And they were just ecstatic, and I did another one yesterday that was up in Northborough.
So, anyhow,
When I talk about,
right.
yeah,
So this creates,
some tax.
an opportunity for trustees to bring in new items for us to discuss. If you're working, I know, Steve, you attended a meeting with the Housing Production Plan
Yeah, it was
Consultant.
the kickoff meeting
So
for that.
sometimes you let Ed and myself know if there's an agenda item for discussion and action. But if it's an update, it'll go, if it's a quick update, it'll go in the section, sort of keep things moving. So my issue in correspondence today is also about budget. Once we have the numbers, we'll be I'd like to pull together a draft budget for fiscal '25, starting July 1st. We have some small administrative costs related to our technology use. We should have some legal fees that, if they're not associated with a specific project, we spend, and having some other administrative
And we're-
mailing, postage, stationery, things of that nature. I think we should get some yard signs, so we have a project, we can put up some yard signs, things of that nature. I'll come back with an estimate for a budget next week. That's
Yeah.
one item. The second item is, given that we have 2 articles on the warrant, I'm interested in knowing if the trustees, if we'd like to schedule an evening meeting prior to town meeting to discuss the 2 warrant articles with the public, and as well as the 6 Beach and 45 High Street Extension projects in general, so that we will have had, and even prior to that, as part of an invitation to that meeting, sending a letter to the abutters as well. I pulled abutters to both of those projects. Interestingly enough, not everyone on High Street Extension ends up being an abutter, but we invite them all. It's a small street. So that people are aware of what we're giving at least information to the community that, hey, if you're not aware this is happening, this is going to be on town meeting, this is what it is. So at least a letter and possibly a meeting where we would show the slides, do the overview, effectively preview our town meeting presentations for people interested.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Are the
Great
two
idea.
projects far enough along that we're ready to respond to a lot of questions on them?
I think they're in a good place because we don't want to go much further
Without getting
support.
some kind of support, yes, okay.
Yeah, and again, if you stay focused on the town meeting articles, it's to inform, give folks a chance to give us their feedback on the town meeting articles.
Yeah, I think the one that's going to be difficult, as we saw, was on the article, what we call Article 28, because that's really the home rule petition gets into a lot of
I've reworded
rewording. I know.
like 5 to simplify it.
Yeah, I know. That's
this
a good
is-
one. I think the 45 High Street and also the thoughts about Beach Street is just general, keeping people informed about things.
I would position it as a general information session about the work of the trust
Yeah,
and a preview, and information about our 2 warrant articles.
right.
Sounds good to
And
me.
we did have our annual report has been submitted for the for the book, and so we can use some of the points in that to talk, which I did at the AFC when I did a very brief, when we came before the AFC, gave a very brief, update of, things we've been doing. And they appreciated that, and they had also gotten our copy of the annual report that I said, you're getting an advanced copy, just so you can read into more detail some of the highlights that I mentioned. So it's all good to communicate. Particularly, we want to keep, support active among the, the voters and, the people that are being affected by some of the work we do, hopefully positively. Any other issues anybody has to bring that would like
I
to
can
bring
give
up?
a sort of a quick update on the production plan.
Sure.
So we had the kickoff meeting, and really what came out of it was sort of what we're looking for, what the town was looking for. Our next check-in meeting is on February 28th.
Okay,
That's
great.
basically, they were kind of taking the information back and reviewing some of the existing reports to sort of get their head around everything. And I think it's preliminary-ish, but I think it's sort of a date that they'd like to shoot for, is on March 14th, which I believe is actually our next meeting date as well. They're going to come on site to, drive around town with Jenny to sort of get an idea of what's what. And they also wanted to meet with certain groups, including us,
Okay.
to sort of interview and find out what
Sure.
what folks are trying to do. There's been no real talk of the timing yet on that. So once I have an idea, I can share that along
I mean,
with
we
folks.
could have them either before or after, depending upon our agenda.
With a
You know,
subgroup. With a subgroup of trustees.
With a subgroup of trustees, we can't do it,
Yeah.
3 or fewer.
But-
You could,
Exactly.
you could extend the meeting and do it with everybody.
Right, or do that as well.
Just post the meeting as an extended meeting and
oh,
do
yeah,
it with everybody.
I think it's also, at least
Something
their
down.
intent was a larger group to meet with, because they were gonna meet, their hope was to have 2 separate sit-downs, and each one would have 2 or 3 groups in it.
Okay.
So, and that was still being fleshed out as to what groups were to be included, but
When you
Ours
say
was-
groups, you mean like planning department,
Exactly,
AFC?
the housing authority.
Or housing
like,
authority.
Where obviously our group was sort of a given. And housing authority was a given, and they were still trying to figure out what the other groups were before I think they actually said, okay, we'll meet from, 10 to 11 with this group and 1 to 2 with this group. That was still
Okay.
being, but the 14th was the date that was thrown out there for them to come to town, so to speak.
Okay,
But hopefully we'll know more by the 28th, but that's all I've heard as of right now.
Okay,
But the
keep us up
kickoff
to
meeting
date.
went great. The folks involved, everybody was gung-ho and moving along.
okay, wonderful, thank you. Thank you for being the liaison there. All right, any other issues, questions?
I mean, are we talking general issues, or are we talking housing trust issues?
Housing.
We don't have that much time.
Affordable housing trust issues.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Westborough
you,
TV.
Westborough TV, and we're right on 10:30, look at that.